Hello and welcome to the big picture. One of the least discussed areas, especially in the parliament, is the defense sector. More often than not, we witness the defense budget being passed without any discussion or very little discussion. The scrutiny which is necessary, therefore, gets overlooked. The Indian defense forces have gone through rough times in the last couple of years. The Indian Army, which saw some very unsavory controversies in 2013, however, was far better off in 2014. Meanwhile, as far as weapons acquisition is concerned, it has been pretty lax during the last few years. In 2014, which saw a transition from the UPA government to NDA government, what has been the scenario? Has anything changed as far as defense policies are concerned? Did the advent of the NDA government see any major changes in the way weapons are procured? Has our borders been safer than before? What are the challenges which the Indian military faced and what would it be facing in the coming year? We will look at all this today with a distinguished panel of experts. I have with me Major General retired Afsir Karim, a security analyst, Air Vice Marshal retired Kapil, a defense analyst, Ajay Prasad, former defense secretary at the Government of India, Commodore retired Uday Bhaskar, Director, Center for Policy Studies, and R. Prasannan, Chief of Bureau, The Week magazine. Welcome to all of you. Major General Afsir Karim, I would like to come to you first. Is the defense forces, when you look at it today, ready for any eventualities?
You see, it's a very big question.
It's a big question.
Because eventuality can be of many kinds.
Yes.
And according to me, if you would look, say, at two-front war, we are not ready for it.
Okay.
Even the war with China, we are not fully prepared. Pakistan, you can tackle. But the question is that when you talk of eventualities, you got to be mentally prepared, you got to be trained, you got to have weapons, you got to have a nation who understand what's to be done. All this, I don't think, is there in our country today. And therefore, there's a major change required in the orientation in the way the politicians think, the way our bureaucrats think, and even where the generals are thinking. Because most of our generals today have never seen a war. They are mostly talking about insurgencies.
Right.
Most of the things we think about is insurgency in J&K and so on and so forth. War orientation is very limited and strategic thinking is almost missing.
Okay. Air Marshal, would you also agree with that?
No, I agree. I agree entirely with what General Afsir Karim has said. Girish, you were asking about what has been the change, the transitional
we will come to the transition
phase. But basically, at the beginning of the year in February, the Chairman Chiefs of Staff Committee and the Chief of the Air Staff has gone public to say that we are prepared for a two-front war, but it is a very daunting proposition, which is an admission that there weaknesses exist in the system. This has always also been conveyed to the Parliament Standing Committee
right.
By the top military leadership in the UPA government. So when we see this together, we look at, do we have a national security strategy document? Did we have it on Jan? Do we have it today? 1 year has passed. Do we have some kind of state of the armed forces evaluation? What are the threats? What are the challenges? What capacities need to be built up? In what time frame? What funding does that involve? I'm sorry, that hasn't happened. The fact that the NDA government has wasted 10% of its tenure without even nominating a defense minister is an indication of the seriousness of the issue. Manohar Parrikar could have been nominated as a defense minister at the start. Why did it need 6 months of elapsed time for the government to take
No, but there was a minister. There was a minister.
The question is, was a minister, but he knew and the government knew and the Prime Minister knew and the public of India knew this was not a permanent arrangement. So, ministerial
But some important decisions were taken during that period when Jaitley was the defense minister.
It's a question of announcements were made. There's a difference between an announcement, a decision, and its progression to what happens on the ground. This is a process. I don't see the announcement, for example, BJP's manifesto talked about that we will fast track border roads. 6 months it would be interesting to know what progress has been made. Secondly, there will be a great emphasis on defense industry and the increase in local content.
We will come to the defense industry.
It's not happening.
We'll come to the
6 months
defense
is
industry.
too short
We'll come
a
to the
period.
defense industry there. Uday Bhaskar, you know, specifically, I know it's a very huge area as General Afsir Karim was saying, but the thing is, Kapil Kak spoke about national security strategy. Was there something in the offing during the end of the UPA government? Has the NDA government taken it up seriously?
I'm afraid not, Girish, because if you talk about a comprehensive national security strategy that would be appropriate to India's current challenges, and here I would go back to NDA 1 when we had Mr. Vajpayee as the Prime Minister, when this country had gone through the Kargil War. So from 99 to where we are now in 2014, the need for a comprehensive national security strategy that could deal with this wide spectrum of challenges from Kargil all the way to the strategic dimension is something that has been often referred to, but I'm afraid the political establishment and the higher defense management of the country has not applied their mind in a rigorous way. And I see this really as the primary deficiency. Now, to extend the observation made by General Afsir Karim, I think if you look at the hardware, you look at the software, I, as an analyst, would make the case that India's defense preparedness across the board has many glaring deficiencies, and it is a reflection of the kind of importance this attracts in Parliament that rarely in these 15 years have we had a serious, sustained debate. Right. Barring that immediate aftermath of Kargil 1999, the attack on Parliament in December 2001, and again subsequently Mumbai, November of 2008. But these were emotive, episodic responses in Parliament. The hard work, which is that the legislature and the executive and the military need to sit together and really look at the deficiencies and how to redress, has not been done. And I'm afraid the Modi government has also been disappointing, meaning that there has been a lot of lip service paid, a lot of announcements made, and even the suggestion that Mr. Jaitley as defense minister had taken some very major decisions is not factual. An approval by a defense acquisition committee is only an approval in principle. So I'm afraid the picture to me is rather bleak, and I do hope that your program will make the difference, Girish.
Mr. Ajay Prasad, do you also share this very bleak, all my three, very distinguished panelists who have served the Indian military have very bleak, what they're saying? Do you also share the same pessimism, rather?
I'm afraid I do to a large extent. And I agree with what Commodore Uday Bhaskar was saying. We have been particularly deficient in strategic thinking, and our defense forces is also, I think the attention, as General Karim was saying, is shifting from meeting the external challenges to more and more preoccupation with internal insurgency issues. And I think that is reflecting in the neglect that is coming in the overall defense preparedness. Another brief point I'd like to make to you is that in any sustainable defense policy against any aggression, what you need is a very sound and strong manufacturing base, and that we have not created. And to my mind, that is one of the major deficiencies in our whole strategic planning.
Okay. Prasannan, why has this been happening? Why you have been looking at, you have been reporting on the defense sector. Is it lack of political application of mind that we are seeing this kind of a situation?
Yes, there has been a very, very, very sad non-application of mind on the part of the executive as well as the legislature and even the military brass, I would say, on what what constitutes a defense policy. Do we have one? No,
A
we
national
don't.
security strategy or a national security policy, we have never had.
We never had one. Yes, we in the late 90s and the early 2000s we thought of a doctrine, but then each service was asked to formulate its own doctrine, and the services did bring up its own doctrines. But at the same time, afterwards, what happened? Well, has there been any attempt at putting these doctrines together and looking at having a holistic security doctrine? Sorry, we haven't had. Even Kargil, which delivered a kind of shock treatment on this nation, a military shock treatment, which hasn't happened since 1971, even that failed to wake us up into a kind of waking into this kind of, understanding the doctrine, understanding the threats, understanding the concerns that we have on the strategic periphery that we are working in. We have been approaching each as piecemeal. Now we have been talking of a muscular doctrine and all. Now, before this government came up, there has been a lot of talk, a muscular talk, and there was a lot of expectation created also. Now, what happened after that? After that also, yes, we had to make in India, we had to export arms. All these statements have been made. And as you said, there have been a few procurement decisions have been made. But apart from that, procurement decisions, these were long pending and it had to be done. Otherwise, the services themselves would collapse. Without equipment, what do? So those are very routine decisions which are being announced. And some of these decisions had been more or less taken in principle
By the previous government.
also, previous government. So these were merely announcing the decisions or simply fast-tracking some of the tactical or immediate ad hoc decisions which had to be taken in the routine manner. So beyond that, I don't think anything has happened.
Okay. Major Karim, manufacturing base, Ajay Prasad was talking about manufacturing base, where Kapil Kak also mentioned earlier. So is this something which we are 70% of our military requirements, equipments are being imported, right? And now we are talking of creating a, make in India. And there are some, significant things which have happened with Russia recently when the Russian president was here. They're talking of some Israeli technology coming in. Is this a good beginning? Do you see this as some kind of a stepping stone for us to become more self-reliant?
You see, just now we are only talking about it. There is no specific policy, there is no advancement in that policy. The capability perhaps exists in our private sector to a certain extent. They are not experienced in this, but they will gain experience. Our technology is not up to date. We have to build all these things up and then feed it to the defense sector in the country and see what they can produce. Because this has to happen, otherwise you will never be prepared really for war because you always depend upon other people.
Right.
Even if they give you weapons, they won't give you spare parts.
Right.
And they won't give you ammunition at the last moment. So defense preparedness has to be from within the country.
So when you're talking initially, when you said that we are not prepared and things, is it the lack of weaponry, lack of ammunition? Is that the problem?
No, weapons.
Or you're talking of a larger thing also?
Lack of proper weaponry, which is required, is the problem. But that is not the only problem. That's one of the problems. But since there's no way out, you are all the time buying from outside, spending so much money and not getting really what you want. Therefore, you have to move very fast in developing in your own country.
Okay. And Marshal?
Girish, maybe...
Because manufacturing,
Yes, I'll concentrate on manufacturing. You see the...
Sorry to intervene, but I want you to also answer the question which I asked him also. Apart from the, the huge dependence on imports of this, what are the other problems which makes you all say that, we are not really prepared?
See, basically, I think I would like to, we have discussed the issue of the National Security Strategy document. The second issue is modernization of the armed forces. I'm afraid the modernization of armed forces is not taking place at the rate at which our threats and challenges are enhancing. This is a constant gap, and that gap is not sought to be built up. For example, very simple, we are at 1.74% of GDP on defense, which is the lowest in our post-independence history. We had, before China war, 1.69 or something. or 7.9. Actually, we are even lower than that. So I think these are worrisome situations. The budgetary aspect, the border area strategic road construction, 15 road projects were enunciated by the UPA, only 4 have been completed. So the Air Force has had for last 40 years, 40 combat squadrons. It's down to 34. Navy is short of submarines. Army, Manohar Parikar, just the other day at an event organized by one of the TV channels, said that his focus is on soldier. The soldier does not have gear. He doesn't have an assault rifle. He doesn't have carbine. I mean, how are you expecting that soldier to perform, whether it's in a counterinsurgency mission or in the case of a deterrence breakdown, a limited conventional war? So I think the whole issue of modernization has to be looked afresh. Unfortunately, 6 months have passed. That hasn't happened. But coming to the industry, this is a far more critical question. There is no doubt Prime Minister Modi's vision to give a great thrust to manufacturing is admired by all the armed forces of India, including the public and all of us. But the problem is to convert that vision into a program. My view is that there are 2 deficiencies. One is that there is very little coordination between the verticals involved in the defense industry. That's the Ministry of Defense, the DRDO, the defense public sector undertakings, the private sector, the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. There is complete lack of integration. So you can't build a strategy document. That's what General Afsir Karim was saying. You have to have a strategy. It's not a procurement document. I mean, our defense procurement document is called Defense Procurement Procedure. I mean, is Indian defense centered on a procedure or is it on a strategy? We need to decide that. Third point is private sector. I believe that private sector over the years has been involved in some critical programs. I don't need to enunciate them. They have come out successfully in those programs. Why don't we involve them more? Because the PSUs have acquired a certain vested interest in the continuance of that arrangement. So unless this whole thing is strategized,
that needs to be broken.
We're not going to
that
get
needs to
anywhere.
be broken.
Absolutely.
That vested interest, which we have actually
Absolutely.
on the same platform, we have discussed that earlier also. Uday Bhaskar, about the modernization as well as private sector getting into weapons manufacture. We have seen that when the FDI was 26%, when had been at 26%, virtually no one came forward to take up that. Now with the enhancement of the FDI to 49%, you expect anything better to happen?
In a very marginal way, Girish, because as you rightly said, we have discussed this in your very forum in the past. And my observation as an analyst is that this particular 49% is not really going to make a difference. And if I may just extend the points made by my panelists, General Afsir Karim and Kapil Kak, the picture is very, very bleak. And I think Kapil has rightly pointed out to the glaring platform deficiencies, Army, Navy, Air Force. And I keep saying that the Indian military has been burdened by the political cross of the Bofors and the HDW.
Right.
The fact that we had the equivalent of 2 quote-unquote scandals going back to the Rajiv Gandhi years has led to a situation where every major decision for procurement is really becoming the equivalent of a political football. So apart from the fact that today India does not manufacture its own personal weapon for an army that is more than 1 million, is a reflection about the complete poverty of decision making as far as India and manufacturing is concerned, let alone higher end equipment like tanks, artillery guns, surface ships and aircraft, which is another very, very depressing story if you go into the detail. But I just want to say one thing, that if we want to make the difference, which is what the Modi government is constantly saying, there is chapter and verse that previous governments have done. And I want to say that all that this parliament has to do, what Prime Minister Modi needs to do, is to ensure that parliament discusses and debates the defense reforms in a sustained 24/7 manner for at least 2 weeks, non-stop, no interruption in parliament. and go back to the Kargil Review Committee report that Mr. K. Subramaniam, the late Subramaniam, was the chairman. The 4 reports done under Mr. Vajpayee's watch when he was Prime Minister, some very useful work done. Subsequently, the Kelkar Committee, the Ramarao Committee, and the Ravindra Gupta Committee, all of them have done very useful work to say what is the way ahead. Some of these reports need to be tweaked and brought up to speed of 2014. But unless we move with great urgency and in a very objective way, as an analyst towards the end of 2014 on Rajya Sabha TV, I'm taking the liberty of saying that this country is facing a very serious security challenge and that the legislature has abdicated. It's a strong statement.
That's a
I
very
hope
strong.
you let this run
That's
on
a very strong and that's a very strong statement, Mr. Ajay Prasad. Ajay Prasad, Uday Bhaskar mentioned several reports. We have been hearing about them. All kinds of reports have been submitted about modernization, about all. Why is it that the government has not taken these, successive governments have not taken this up seriously? Where is the problem?
No, I would only partially agree with your statement that the governments have not taken it up seriously. I was personally involved with the implementation of the report on the restructuring of the higher defense management. And except for the one very crucial and critical recommendation about the Chief of Defense Staff, all the other recommendations by and large were fully implemented, including the half-hearted attempt at jointness and without a CDS, but creation of structures like the Andaman, the Strategic Forces Command, the Andaman Command, and various other exercises on jointness. But let me come back to an issue about what we are talking about modernization. You see, we were talking in the late 90s and early 2000 about a term revolution in military affairs. And then we started about net-centric warfare and jointness and all. Now, what have we delivered in that? Where is this so-called revolution in military affairs? Has it taken place anywhere and how has it impacted the life of a soldier? This is some of the questions that need to be raised. Manufacturing area is an entirely different thing. We have been woefully lacking in creating a domestic industrial base for defense manufacturing. And as I said right in my opening remarks, without such a base existing in the country, you cannot talk of a sustained and effective defense policy.
Okay. Prasannan, let us look at the base of all these things, the life of a soldier, what Mr. Ajay Prasad was talking about, the morale of the army or the defense forces. Where does it stand? In this year, do you think that it has enhanced or it has taken a beating?
No, the morale of the soldier, if you are asking about, that has remained more or less constant. And also because, see, the soldier on the ground, the man with the boot on the ground is not that much. He is basically concerned about whether he has got his equipment and all that. Where there is no issue. And luckily for us, I think this is one of the finest armies in the sense that it is an army that is being led by from the front. So that way, there is no issue there. But where we are failing is when it comes to the total picture, not about the individual soldier, but about the total defense management. As we have been saying earlier also, there is the strategic picture that is confronting us is not being imbibed into any kind of study, and what is to be done about it.
But there are several reports.
There are several reports, as Commander Uday Bhaskar recounted. There have been 4 reports even after Kargil war. But what happened to those reports? Even Ramarao committee also, we don't know. That also dealt with restructuring of the DRDO. Now, I wanted to flag that one particular issue. We are talking about a lot about making India. Fine, that's a good sentiment to be expressed, and that's a good policy also to be followed. But making India does not, now we are going to invite a lot of maybe foreign investment, and fine, foreign technology will come. But we are not going to get cutting edge technology. Nobody is going to give us the technology that they want to monopolize on. No, a lot of technology has to be homegrown. The cutting edge technology will have to come. We have been buying the MiGs, we have been buying the Sukhois, we have been buying the Jaguars and all that. We think that we have got the technology. No, we got the basic technology to put them together. But the design, no. We have to make our own design. So what
And where do we stand on that?
Unfortunately,
Because there's a lot
lot
of talk about what the DRDO has done.
Yes, DRDO is being whipped by everybody. That's another matter which is beyond the scope of this discussion. But at the same time, how much have we done? We haven't created new designs. We have to create those things. But how much of investment are we making in R&D? We are putting R&D in manufacturing. We are making more money is going to import. But where have we put money in developing the R&D? That is, I think, the basic failure of our the defense policy.
Major Karim? General Karim, what is your... how do we go about this? In the sense that, an year has ended, a new government has come in, they have several challenges which you people have already made. What do you expect this government to do in the coming year? What is it that, the key things which they need to take up if the government has to fulfill some of the lacunae which all of you have pointed out?
You see, first I'll expect this government to understand what is the problem is of defense.
And you don't think the governments have understood what the problem is?
No, they are marginally aware of this, but they haven't gone in depth. They haven't formed a strategic policy.
General Karim, when you say the government needs to understand, is it a problem of the political authority or is it the problem of the bureaucracy? Where does the problem lie?
The problem is that, unlike many other countries, our politicians are just not been through any kind of a military experience. And most of them now haven't known war also. So they are not fully aware of what the defense requirements are, how to form a strategy, what kind of a strategic long-term defense planning should be done, how the service integration is more important than other things, and so on and so forth. So once that is understood, they can push the bureaucracy. They can take all the expertise required from various sectors and form a policy which is a long-term policy, not a policy of a particular party. It's not a 5-year policy. It's a long-term defense policy.
Yes, quickly, sir, we're running out of time.
Okay, I'd just offer 4 specific points for you, Girish. First is the critical need for civil-military relations and higher defense reform. I mean, Naresh Chandra Committee has put its report about a year ago. I mean, the first thing that we can do, the Prime Minister and his Defense Minister, he has a very competent Defense Minister. It'll take a while to settle down. I mean, is to firstly put that behind them. To have a permanent chairman, Chiefs of Staff Committee, or a chairman of Joint Staff, who will head the integrated defense staff. You will integrate the armed forces with the Ministry of Defense in a very meaningful way by having key appointments in Ministry of Defense and not a token presence. Thirdly, most critically, look at the defense industry afresh. R&D expenditure in India is 6.7%. Last 20 years, we've been arguing that unless it's 10% and bulk of it in capital and not in revenue. DRDO's capital is only 38%.
Right.
Whereas it should be about 60%. Lastly, we also need to look at our strategic neighborhood and where defense will take us there. Our regional interlocutors have a lot of expectations from India as a stabilizer. But our ability to deliver that stability through track record is minimal.
Uday, Bhaskar, very quickly, what is it that you expect from this government in the coming year?
I think this government has aroused a lot of expectations in the last 6 to 7 months. The challenge for them is to deliver, and that is where I think they are on test. And my personal recommendation come advocacy is, can Parliament please sit down and discuss the nature of the problem and the level of the inadequacy, and let us have an informed and objective debate in Parliament for at least 1 or 2 weeks. And look at the armed forces, the paramilitary, the police, the intelligence, the whole gamut.
You're being very optimistic with that. Mr. Ajay Prasad, very quickly, sir.
No, I'm a little more optimistic now. In the last 6 months, this present government has made the right noises about addressing the key issues which confront defense. And now that we have a very competent defense minister in place, I think things should start moving.
Okay,
One
okay.
of the major initiatives that will have to be taken again is on the manufacturing and
front.
getting
Okay.
new technologies
Okay, sir.
involved.
Prasannan, very quickly.
Apart from manufacturing, I'll also flag R&D, because R&D is basically the base on which you are going to build your future capabilities.
Absolutely. I think on that note we need to end. I'm sure this is a discussion which could have gone on and which should go on. As Uday Bhaskar hopes that at least the Parliament, we will see the Parliament in the coming year discuss these issues thoroughly and come to some kind of a conclusion. Thanks to all my guests, Major General Afsir Karim, Air Vice Marshal Kapil, Commodore Uday Bhaskar, Mr. Ajay, Prasad and Prasannan. Please keep watching. We'll come back with more issues about what happened in India in 2014.